Alex Verville, welcome to Rich Souls.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so first thing I want to recap for the audience more of your background. So for anyone who doesn't know you yet, how do you describe what you do?
I am a capital raiser. I guess more of a professional term would be an investment banker, someone that deals with raising capital for businesses. Is I guess the short, easy way to say it.
But there is a nuance too with the kind of businesses and founders that you work with, right?
Definitely. I mean, the businesses and founders that I like to work with are people who, and this is interesting that you asked that question because, I work in a very highly regulated industry, and so there's always this question of, what industry do you raise capital for? Like, is it manufacturing? Is it health tech? Is it agri-tech? Is it regenerative farming? And what I always tell founders, because of the capital network and are really people, that I have been privileged enough to speak with and learn about what it is that they're trying to do in terms of how they're distributing their capital. The wording I always give founders is I'm industry agnostic, meaning that I can work with really anyone, because I'm really evaluating who and what I'm working with based off of the person and the individual and what is their and this might sound snobby, but what is their email cadence like? If they say they do something in terms of they're going to send the meeting invite, even if I'm the one who said I'm happy to send you, a calendar invite, but they don't do it. Those little things tell me something about the individual. Is like, can they follow through on what it is that they're saying or doing? So, to give you just an overview, we're running like 7 mandates right now, like in terms of advisory and capital raising. One of them is for a really cool founder that is in black and brown bridal boutique, in which she is in Atlanta and she has all of the high end, couture fashion. But the dresses are rented instead of purchased. And she's only doing about $500,000 annual rev a year. And then there's another mandate that we're working on that's a transportation and logistics platform where they have over 870 trucks and trailers, and they're $100 million company, and have locations in Illinois and Houston and LA, and they're running, trucking routes throughout Central and South America. So yeah, it's an interesting, so to answer your question, it's really a deep analysis of, a company, in terms of their due diligence or what does their financials look like, but then more so really the human, because this is where I think a lot of times, especially with money, people believe that money is greater than the human. But the truth is the human is what, is the steward of the money and multiplies it. And any company that's built is built off of the collaboration and the organism of humans that are behind it. And so when I learned that, it allowed me to, in my role also, like when I'm talking to capital sources, be like, no one is greater than, no one is better than, and that the operator has something that you need, and you obviously have something that the operator needs, which is the capital or cash, So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but that is kind of how I explain how I decide on people to work with, because it's not just like spiritual entrepreneurs, because spirituality, like I said, sometimes it's people you would never think, but they're just doing their thing, and it's like a manufacturing company, and I love that just as much as someone who's there's a regenerative group that we're raising their Series C right now for 15 million, and it's called Earth Optics, and they're using AI for regenerative farming, in which that they're taking land and soil in the US and abroad, and using the data that they have of over 40 years of different large case farming, and making it usable for like every personal user, in terms of like you can literally take soil DNA. Think of like our the DNA testing, and like you can and it's giving you like a soil readout, of what you should be growing there, what kind of soil should be used. And so that would be like something that everyone would think that Erah Capital would work with, because it's emerging Renaissance age of humanity. But I think the capital side of Erah Society is a bit different in that, some of the people might not, fit like what others would think we would work with. So.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. One thought, one question. I had a friend once tell me that the most spiritual people they don't like exhibit as being spiritual, which I think is exactly what you're speaking to. It's like, what is the nature of the individual, and like, how are they then infusing that essence and the work ethic, the skilled talent, etc., into a business that's actually serving the world?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where too, like in my own practice, I'm just realizing one of my wife, Jasmine's best friends, told me a long time ago that your spiritual practice should be the most intimate thing that you possess, in terms of like who gets to see it, who gets to touch it, who gets to talk about it. And I think that's a very, again, everyone has their own definition of it, or like how they want that to play out. But I do think that in the West, because of like, honestly, I'll say I think because of like the way that Christianity was used as like a colonizing thing, like regardless of what your spirituality is, it could be veganism, it could be surfing, it could be anything. Like we feel this need, especially in America, to like convert almost, you know what I mean? To persuade, to show that your way is better than or something, you know what I mean? Like, so it's no longer spiritual. It's actually like to build up your like pride and your ego. And I've been very culpable of that, especially because my background was, kind of in a deep-seated Christian perspective. So yeah, each month and each year I get a little bit less like, hey, should I talk about this, or should I, just espouse this, or is this person really like asking a genuine question about like what it is and how it is that I view the world and how I engage with it,
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Erah Society, and I want to just give listeners just a little tidbit about Erah Society and Erah Capital too before we get further into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Erah Society right now is a media and slow business kind of platform, is like what I would say in its current iteration. Jazz's background was Ogilvy and Teen Vogue. She had a master's in fashion from London School of Arts, and she's always been the right side, of Erah Society. Whereas like I, was an international business major and then worked in a Swiss family office in Switzerland and Germany, and got deep into finance right out of university. And so I was always like the left brain, or left side of kind of structure and building, pro formas and budgets and stuff. So, but Jazz really, while we were living in Bali, out of a company that we had started called Moondust, our mother, really wanted to create like this idea of not a founder-led business, but the business is led in it, and you can pick and plug whoever the operators are. I think a lot of times in health and wellness and it's really predicated like on the individual. Like if the individual leaves, everything is kind of gone. Whereas like Jazz really made a great pivot in that she wanted the brand to be what stood out and not her, because it was really just like built off of her thoughts and ideas and that nature. And then, while we were in Bali, I joined an investment banking firm and kind of got back to my roots a little bit. And in the process, asked her, would you kind of carve out a section of Erah for Erah Capital, and she agreed a little bit reluctantly, but over time, I think it's been a cool, wabi sabi type of idea of like, how can you, really bring in consciousness to an area that's really, a lot of people have wounds and scars because it's used in an extractive way, so, that's, I guess, the best version I have of it right now, of like what Erah Society is and what Erah Capital is and how the two interrelate to each other.
Yeah, and I think what makes you so interesting, and this is like a theme throughout Rich Souls, is like that bridging of the mystical and the practical, or the left and the right. And obviously with you having your background in finance and capital, even from like corporate and then into Erah Society, all throughout, or I think actually you can give us a timeline here, but of your faith, your spirituality, and how that's been infused in your career, especially as you and Jazz built out Erah Society.
Uh-huh.
So, can you give everyone a background on your personal arc with spirituality?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I grew up in a very, very I don't know, oddly rigid and legalistic Christian perspective, but then also like an incredible exposure and privilege of like real Christ consciousness, like people who genuinely believed in like how Christ acted, not in the way that the then humans kind of created a construct around what they thought their savior would be. Um, and so I grew up loving Jesus, like just loving him, like just thinking like, wow, just the way that he was and acted is just so cool, and really how I want every human to feel, in every interaction, at least with me. And so that led to like a lot of bullying, I like growing up in America, a lot of bullying and not acceptance, by middle school. It was like very taboo because I was that kid that was like, because I also carried the wounds of that, of like telling people don't swear, like all the legalistic like things and judgmental and self-righteousness that kind of comes with, sometimes religious practices. And then that kind of led me to like, being an atheist for a while and in and out, being angry and, the whole thing. I think that all of us go through, regardless of if you grew up religious or not. And then what's wild though is like, so I played soccer really competitively and ended up getting a Division I soccer scholarship. And that led to like weirdly going to a Christian university, like that's like a 14,000 person school. And so, yeah, I was inundated again, but it was like in Virginia. So it was like Southern Baptist tradition, of like Christianity, which is, again, there's hundreds of different denominations or of how people, again, practice that specific, religion. That just really led, and then just always being like a seeker though. So like I always, even if it was my aunt or another individual who was Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish, if they were like practicing something though that like Christ would do, I'd be like, they're more Christian than these people. And so therefore they're not set apart from me. Like I feel more connected to them. So there was always this deep seated, connectedness to like what is right action, what, like, regardless of who it's coming from and how it is, and that kind of then defined my individual path outside of like my family or any other thing that creates our identity, being in race or religion and socioeconomic status, all the things that make our external identity created. And then luckily I ran into Jazz at 24, and she was the only person that I'd ever met that like wanted to reopen, who is Alex outside of all of it. So I'd just come back from Germany, living abroad, and was living in Baltimore. And so meeting her just opened up this, I think, freedom to like tell myself that I can go after whatever it is that I want, in terms of like finding my own peace. And so we quit our jobs and moved to Thailand. And then from there, we were in Thailand for a while, then moved back to LA. But the whole time, just like I was just now reading like, sacred Hindu texts and Buddhist texts, like just devouring every form of spirituality that I could to try to really decide for myself, what is this all about? And then we ultimately ended up being in Bali for 5 years, which is a Hindu country. And I think what I tell people now is now in retrospect, looking at the steps and the arc that I took, I needed to see like almost in a literal sense, like that every culture, every religion is like just as just as fragmented, or just as like the use of the manipulation of word and of power and of stories. It runs rampant in each of the traditions. I needed to see that. I needed to feel that because that allowed me to then, um, not in a pompous way, but like when I would engage with somebody who has that kind of, tension or hostility, I will call it, or lack of peace, really around it is that their beliefs are, and they're seeking in a way to again debate or persuade. It would just allow me to just like disarm and be like, "Oh, okay, this is where they're at. Now I can ask questions and not feel like I need to defend, you know what I mean, that I believe in all of them. And that all of them are connected in my opinion. And if you really want to know how and why I believe that, I'm happy to go into it, but it's not something um that is for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and and so yeah, that I guess sorry if that is not as direct as you needed. That's my spiritual arc. Deeply believing now in right action and trying to do what's right, and not do it from a piety or self-righteous perspective or judgmental perspective, but really just do it because it's what's right, and you let everything else just fall where it falls.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how is that showing up for you today and in career? So specifically going back to, us preparing for this conversation and you updating me on where you were with Erah Capital and then also interfaith ministry.
Right. Yeah, great question. When you're really good at something, you know, and you've had this too, I think, everyone thinks you should just continue doing it, just because you're really good at it. But if you don't feel that same drive or connectedness to like, want to get up and then you feel inspired, you just, I don't know, you're just left with this like something's missing. And so I kind of had that about 3 months ago with Erah Capital, and in the process realized that like my true dream as a kid was to be like a pastor, a minister, but not a Christian one. I didn't know at the time what it was. And so yeah, the what has kind of come out of that is this desire to really like eventually have like a physical space where people of every single walk of genuine faith can come and have discord and practice each other's um ceremonial like ways to connect with God or the divine or themselves or whatever they categorize, as the ultimate thing that's driving their life or driving, the universe. Because I just think and feel like that's the one part of, again, of the Christianity or the groups that I was involved in. We did do, I mean, I think I was a part of like 7 to 8 like global mission trips to South Africa and Costa Rica and Colombia and Ecuador and got to do and see a lot of cool things. But like you get there and as a kid, you're watching the adults and they think they're giving something to the local people, but really the local people are giving more, to us. And where is the reciprocity? Where is the genuine like takeaway for everybody in those moments? And so yeah, like the interfaith kind of came from me also, like just my own practice of like of just having each and each tradition like taking certain things from them and integrating them into what I kind of believe is like a cohesive I don't know, story. And that's been hundreds of thousands of hours of research and of studying and so yeah, I would ultimately like to have a physical space where people can genuinely just come and do kirtan and do yoga, kriya, and sound, like all the amazing modalities that we've all been, I think, exposed to. I think again, it's just wherever someone is at, it's just an interesting and such a beautiful process to try to actually like hold space or be there with them in that space, because I think all of us question, I think all of us are seeking. It's just a matter of what season, and how much privilege do you have to act like in your life to actually pursue that process.
Totally. I will be very excited once you have that up and running.
Thank you. I know. It's been
It'll be good.
yeah, it's been almost for a decade, Jazz and I have been kind of dreaming and talking about that. So I if it does come to fruition, which I really hope it does, I am very excited as well.
Hmm. Yeah. I've heard critiques, I think specifically from Christianity about this. Maybe it's been other religions too, organized religions, but of the critique of like New Age and of this process of taking what one finds inspirational from different religions and then mashing them all up into their own thing. What do you think about that criticism?
The word normally, like the theological term that most like high Christians use is like you're anthropomorphizing God. It's you that you want it to basically fit your agenda. And that's where I would say that's where I just lovingly say, like, look at the Crusades, look at look at slavery in the US, like things that have the worst monstrosities have been justified because people said, God told us to do this, or this is the way that we interpret like this individual text. Is one way I would, and then I would just say to them, like, I understand and love that you have a specific practice, and that's all I would ask if you really do want to like engage in some sort of like love towards me, is like what you would release me to, because I have peace about the way that I view and practice my own life, and that's all that I hope and wish for you. I think anytime people are high, you just bring them down, instead of being like combative, which I was at first. I wanted to get into like the debates about it because I do know, not egotistically, but I know like the Old Testament and the New Testament like better than almost anyone I know, like, including pastors who have like doctorates in seminary, so it's like I know the same words that I know the same interpretations, I know the same things that everyone has said throughout the last 2,000 years of church history, and they don't warp my brain in the way that I think they warp yours. If I'm really being transparent, I think that each of us have constructs that are running, in our brains, and depending on how comfortable we are to look at them, they just run on autopilot, for all of us. That's not just to do with religion. That's to do with how you go to the bathroom, how you drive a car, how you wash dishes. Like, our conscious mind doesn't want to have to like actually be present with the thing that we're doing, think through it. It's like, you're driving home from work and it's like I think a lot of us have that moment where you were thinking the whole time and you don't actually remember the turns that you always take, but somehow you got home. So yeah, it's not a controversial topic. I think people think it's a controversial topic, but it's a very, it's like a tinder fire, it can ignite things very quickly, I think, because again, whatever we find our intrinsic value and worth in, like our security, our sense of like, like, what is it that, if it all went away, I'd be good, right? Like, someone else disagrees with that. Like, then what really should happen is you should just be like, oh, okay, that's cool that they have theirs and I have mine. But really, to me, that always shows like you're not actually at peace with the way that you like find that intrinsic value in yourself, because I know that when it comes up for myself, truly, like, yeah, it's just like I can say I don't know, and that be okay too,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Things that I've done to try to help know, but really I don't. I am just as human as anyone else, as all of us. So
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I feel like if dogma is in place, no matter what like the dogma is about, it's going to lead to distortion because it's, I think, a manifestation of the ego, right? And the ego is going to, like you said, protect itself. And I think that's when you're like what you're describing is like that manifests as projection onto the other and trying to tear down that to find the other's perspective, to find security in one's own perspective. But really, like, we don't know. And there's so much peace to be found in just like admitting that and allowing the not knowing and allowing even like the conflict that can happen with people.
Yeah,
between
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And leading to just questions, Like if you are in conflict with somebody, like instead of you trying to like prove your point, if you have more peace about the topic, why don't you just ask them? Like where did that come from? Like what was your beliefs, upbringing, and did you have freedom to seek and look at things that were outside of, what your family said or what like religious institution you were a part of, or was it very stringent and people were like, no, don't go down that road, because this is what that leads to. Because a lot of times that is what I have found most people then share, and it turns into like um a chance for them to share something that they normally don't share with anyone. Because if you haven't traced your own kind of journey, it's hard to like even have the space to try to trace somebody else's.
It's also, yeah, like the difference between studying something and learning that way versus experiencing it and learning the same lesson, but on a visceral like level where you're actually embodying the lesson. And then let alone if you mix the two.
You got it. Yeah, no, you got it. And I think also I want to say something too about like this like commentary on like New Ageism. I think it's an interesting way that like Christians like try to discount like a lot of these practices are actually older than Christianity. It's not New Ageism. Like look at where it actually comes from. Like it's Vedic tradition, like coming from Hinduism and Buddhism. Like, is it like something that's like, I mean, if you go into the Kabbalah or any form of mystical, Sufism within Islam, like there's just, again, I just think we're very quick to like scapegoat something that like we don't know about, instead of like actually, again, just doing the research and finding out what it is and where did it come from and how is it actually practiced? Because yeah, anything is dangerous, or can be.
Totally.
So I'm not saying again that like some of the commentary on how people practice some of the like, I guess what they categorize as New Ageism isn't unhealthy, but it would be the same way I would say that like Christian fanaticism is unhealthy, or like
Totally.
you're becoming a new Christian and then thinking you now have all the answers. It's like you have no idea. Like you accepted the thing and you're covered by Christ's blood or whatever, is like the message. Then that's great, and I appreciate that that's your belief system, but there's also so much more to this. This is like a 5,000 to 6,000 year old religion being birthed out of Judaism, like Christ was a Jew. I think most people don't really know that or like want to hold that. The same way that Buddha was a Hindu and then kind of created something new out of Hinduism because it was the same rigid legalistic structure that I think Christ was seeing, like with like manipulation of power, manipulation of money, taxation, like people are struggling to find something different. So yeah, again, there's so many different paths you can take on this topic, but it is
I know.
because I think again it undergirds like to our point about business. Like I mean, it undergirds so many of all of the conversations that I'm a part of, and I immediately, because of that awareness and practice, can normally tell how someone is going to like approach me or talk about something because of their path and what is unfolded for them as it's unfolded for me. I appreciate it because it to me is like a sixth sense that allows me to like say yes or no to who to work with and how to work with them or who to be engaged with or not, because of how much can you open your mind, how much can you open your heart, to like what is actually happening and not what like our expectations or what we think should be happening.
Yeah. I mean, let's go and talk about that now, because I think on paper, so many people would look at what you do. First of all, like this deep passion and like soul call for interfaith ministry or seeking and capital. Like it's just not really like we don't see that mix often in society. But the more I think about it, it's like you said, businesses are just, and I feel this way too, like they're just organizations of human beings and how human beings are relating to one another and what they deem as right or wrong, and then how that steers them forward for the mission of an organization. So they actually do feel really related, but I want to hear from you and how you see them as being related and how you see it manifest, because you are very much so steeped in both worlds.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, the businesses are just a byproduct of the humans and the decisions that those humans make. And money was a medium that was created for us to exchange goods and services, and so I think most people, depending on the experiences that they've had with money, either individually or in a business setting, carry a set of preconceived notions, trauma, um, thoughts, and those things can be really positive or really good, or they can be neutral. They can be a mix of both, or they can be really bad. And really, money's neutral. It just polarizes to the individuals or the entities that are utilizing it. And so yeah, the whole goal with like Erah Capital was like, why not be as loud and boisterous as like the other side? Like if the other side is using it in a way that is super extractive, or like the BlackRocks, the Goldman Sachs, like, the people, like why the world kind of hates bankers, like rightfully so. I get it. But at the same time, like if money in the way that our system is currently set up is the way that it's set up, to not take part in it actually is like not being human. It's not, in my opinion, in like really being, when you talk about dogma or you talk about dharma, it's like you're like asked, if you're alive in this time and age, you know what I mean, to be a part of it, then out of your own fear, in my opinion, or you're just like saying no. And again, you can do that, but and I tried to for a while, but like I think it just does a great disservice to all of the amazing things that want to be expressed, and money is the vehicle that helps those things be expressed. I mean, I tell almost all of my clients, the one thing I love about American capitalism is that any idea that you have, as long as you can monetize it, you can genuinely do whatever the fuck you want. Like seriously, like in America, you can do anything you want. If you can make money off of it, and it's like regulated, or, not creating harm, in a way that like some governing body needs to approve, whether it be used like in food and stuff or whatever, you can genuinely go to market and do it. And I think that's a beautiful proposition. And I really think, and I got this from Jazz, is that like business is like one of the highest forms of art. I think we get like snobby about what is art and what isn't. And it's like everything is art. If it's being created, it's art. We ourselves and what we do are art. And so that's the other side of it too, is that I love that you can, go on and do the thing, that you feel like you have to do, because it's ultimately, going to feed you and hopefully feed your family if you have a family, if you have employees or contractors, right? Like you are helping people in a way that I think is deeper than almost just like than this, which is like conversations are great and perspectives are amazing, but like what is it that everyone needs and what are they worried about? And normally it's still rent, it's still their food, it's still clothes on their back, it's tuition for their kids, it's it's all the things that like most of us are still thinking about on a month-to-month basis, like, will it be there? And if you can create something that genuinely is birthed out of like your deepest passions, and monetize it, then like there's nothing holier than that to me. And it really provides me a lot of like inspiration to help in the way that I'm kind of called, which is like, okay, I'll help you raise, some money for that thing, whether it be $500,000 or 50 million. Yeah, it's cool too to like you get to a point where like looking at those numbers, hearing them, it doesn't overstimulate your nervous system. I think that's the other thing, is like we hear things with money because of what our individual experience has been with it. And it disallows us, or we immediately judge it, or we say no, when you can just be open, or maybe, and just go slower with it and work through it. So I don't know. That's how I would kind of long-windedly view, money and how it can be used in a way that's very poetic and beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like money is I guess it's always a relevant topic, actually. I was going to say it's very relevant right now. And in some ways it is, like with entrepreneurship being the most accessible it's ever been at this time. Freelancing is becoming a more prominent like career path for a lot of people. And in that, I just see so much discourse about money and like how it relates to the nervous system. And you've had this perspective of, or this like trajectory of being in a corporate organization, working in capital, and then going into entrepreneurship and still working in capital. And so I feel like you've had this like, yeah, really wide span of seeing probably how people on like the micro level with the individual to organizations view money. And I'm just curious of those insights and what you've seen as, let's start with maybe common distortions of perspective with money.
Yeah, I mean, I think common distortions, even in my own self, and that's also been the healing part for me too, like on an individual basis, is to like see how, because my own dad like was very, very successful, but like he grew up, his wound was like he didn't have much as a kid. So he's always was worried about money. And it just like was always this point of contention in my parents' marriage. And then vice versa. There was 4 of us kids. So how that money was distributed, it was always, there was always an ROI attached, or like on the investment. Like what are we getting out of the money that we are spending? And going back to my like soccer, I mean, I was playing in a very like prestigious tournament at Nike headquarters in Oregon. And I remember having a really bad game. I think I was 14 years old, and my dad, he just said to me after the game, like, "You're not worth the amount of money that the family is spending on you." Yeah, yeah, but that was hit. But and then it's terrible, as a 14-year-old. But then as a 36-year-old, I get where he's coming from. And I have a lot of grace and understanding. Granted, that took me a long time to get to because it was a big scar for me. Constantly, in a lot of ways, people pleased and was over generous for so much of my career because it's like if money is connected, I need to make sure that like this person doesn't like feel like they can hold something against me. Again, distortions. I think a lot of people think that if they're exchanging money, then they somehow like own a person or something. That's number one. I think everyone's largest distortion is that like that's a fallacy. Is humans are greater than money in every single scenario. Doesn't matter if it's a houseless person walking into a coffee shop and they can't get anything, you still treat them with dignity and respect, regardless of if they're not a paying customer or not. But yeah, I think that's the first distortion that I have seen, is that, yeah, immediately when you exchange money, somehow people think that now, yeah, you owe me like beyond what the contract, or what we agreed goods and services would be. And I can't stand that. So that's number one is like, we just had like a $20 million raise meeting, that Zoom call I was telling you about. And I just told the client on the phone, like, it's just not a match. Like, I really appreciate the time and energy that you guys took in this. And I know, and as a group, we spent probably 5 to 10 hours of diligence on it, without any exchange of money. But like talking to them, I could just see and feel what this relationship is going to be like for the next 3 months. And it's a no, just a no for me. And that took some time, that took, yeah, multiple clients and raises for me to be able to get there and like not, go into scarcity mindset of like, if I say no to this, then that means, this thing will fall apart or this thing will fall apart, instead of like, oh, I'm opening up space for a more aligned client or whatever, which is like kind of I think how our group of people view it. Like, which I say group of people being like people who are just like trying to be spiritual, I guess, is what I would say.
Abundance mindset.
Yeah. So that's definitely number one. I think the other is oddly people are very shy about their confidence and belief in that they're worth the money, like that people like want to put into them. I think that like, at least in my industry, yeah, like the whole point is to like disperse capital. You know what I mean? Like if a family office or like a private equity group like has money on its balance sheet, they legally have to get it off of their balance sheet within 5 years, or genuinely is what the industry calls as dry powder. It's now taxable. You know what I mean? So they have to get it, they have to spend it, So like this idea of why me, is very prevalent in a lot of again, that abundance mindset that you were just saying, like, is like so much of what I do with clients is like, we just raised $1 million for this group in Illinois. And then once $1 million hit his bank account, he texted our group chat. And it was like, this broke and this broke. And I just like, before I like started talking about that, I just said, hey, how about you just take a breath and feel what it feels like to have $1 million in the company bank account right now? Like, just feel that before you like start spending it. Cause I know that I also, as someone who, is easy to spend, I like to spend. I'm not really a saver. I've had to learn that. Yeah. Like it's just so easy to just like, okay, it's gone and then it's gone. Kind of thing. So I think that's another one is just like what it is to feel like safe and secure, like in the money that you do have, and how is that being circulated and where and how is that coming back, so yeah, I think that's probably the main ones that come to mind, at least right now, like from your question, which is a very good question because you can go on for hours about all people, engage with money. Like it's very.
There's so many layers because it is tied to value or self-worth, programming. I mean, there's just so much like productivity. Okay, so let's flip it on its head now. Have you met people? I'm sure you've come across people who are just like, there's just energy flow with money with them.
Yes.
And what are those people like? And what do you see as distinguishing beliefs or characteristics about them?
They know that money genuinely is there to support them. You know what I mean?
Cool.
And it's a byproduct of the work and the vision that they have. Like they know it's always going to be there because why wouldn't it be? Like it's an inalienable right is like how they view it. You know what I mean? Like they view it just like, I don't know, like they can, like they're human. So it's like, I should have money. You know what I mean? And as a human, like money is what I need. So yeah, it's just this, they don't even question it. There's no block, like there's not a, man. And that's, to be honest, I'm still getting there. Like where sometimes I'm around certain clients and it's like, okay, you're so abundant that like they don't question it. Like that's really the main thing. Like there's not even it's not even a topic, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's just not even something that comes up because it's just so, we know like what it is and what we need, and this is how we're gonna do it, and then it comes in, and it's very,
and then it does.
Yeah, and it does every time. It does.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, and yeah, so it's so interesting. And I think, how did they get there? Yeah, sometimes it is through, they're completely self-made, and they've just gone through that journey of like, okay, it was hard. We went through trying times, but every time we came out of it and it always worked out. And, he who has will be given more. And when you're given more, you'll be given in abundance. I do think there's something to that, like where you get to a new nervous system and then that becomes the default, whereas like, yeah, there's nowhere else to go. Like, yes, I did have that time in my life where this was not the default, but in terms of it ever being possible for this not to be, yeah, that's like, there's just this internal confidence. You know what I mean? I attribute that to like the same as like athletes, like really high performing athletes where they like asked Serena Williams, I remember a certain Wimbledon, like the announcer after she won, like, did you win and how did you feel like you were going to win? And she was like, well, I already won in the locker room, like pre-match, like the match was already won, and it sounds arrogant, but it's not. It's so just, who you are, what you're doing, where you're going, that there is no other outcome that's possible. And that's how, those people, that's how they are about it, where it's like, even if there's like a lag in the timing of distribution of funds, let's say, because again, sometimes even after due diligence and everything's been done, there'll be like a week or two before like a wire transfer actually happens, and they're just like, don't worry, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, that's $5 million that you're waiting on, that you need, but you're not worried, so I will take your nervous system as my default rather than how I'm feeling right now, which is like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this happening? So yeah, it's very, very inspirational because I think that is everyone's possible default, truthfully. But I think, yeah, we are byproducts of our own creation, and we are creating our own worlds and realities. And yeah, to your point about, yeah, just what your beliefs are and where your self-worth is, like that's how those things are, determined normally. So
Yeah. Well, and I think too, in the spiritual world, we talk a lot about belief systems and like subconscious reprogramming. And what I'm finding and what I've heard you say throughout both of these scenarios of like the people with the like the common distortions that you see, and then the common like or more rare expansion of the characteristics of these individuals is it's not just the mind, it's not just beliefs. It is that like, I mean, the word that comes to mind is embodiment, but just like the physical reaction of either scenario. And yeah, it's like a belief, if you could call it that, because it's not of the mind, in there being an abundance of resources, in one's right to have access to those resources, in one's right to generate those resources no matter what changes. And that is something where I'm like, okay, what's the hack to getting to that? And I wonder if it does start on like a really micro level. I mean, with the example you gave of the client that had, I think you said like $1 million hit his account, and then he was like starting to freak out because things were breaking down. But you were like, which like also that kind of, I feel like kind of happened when you're like up leveling, is like, okay, things are going to break to test your system. I don't know if I like the word test, but maybe expand your nervous system to be able to handle like chaos. But yeah, it's like pausing and just being like, what does this actually feel like? And receiving that, because then that does treat or teach your nervous system of like, oh, this is just like, this is my normal right now. And that means it can be my normal moving forward. And then I can continue to expand into higher levels of this same feeling. But if we're not, broadening our scope of our nervous system, of our attention, then we're just going to be focused on like what's going wrong versus like what's going right, which is like what's in front of us, like this $1 million in this man's bank account.
100%. I mean, and like, I'll give you like a really shortened version of like my own testing with this, but like 2018, Jazz and we started an ethical jewelry line, and we were living in Long Beach at the time. And
I didn't know you guys lived in Long Beach.
Yeah, we did for like 3 years. Jazz was born in Torrance, California.
Okay.
That's like where her mom lives there, and her sister are there right now as well. In the process of this, we opened like a healing, like we basically had a healing home like a home goods store that we did like men's groups and women groups and all different like smoke sessions and just a lot of cool stuff. But like part of the goal, was to to really like get this jewelry brand off the line. I mean, off of the ground. And so we probably had about like 7 to 10K worth of stock, but like we were like struggling, but this is where at the time we should have been, like on food stamps or like on, what is it even called? Not food stamps, but like just, government support. But like, we were like, no, we're not going to do it. Cause we were like really testing, like, again, our spiritual practices, like of everything. But like, I kid you not, this was a period of our life where where we were genuinely like eating like I would go to the grocery store some mornings and like spend like 75 cents on bananas, and like that's what we would eat. Like, and we had the kids at this time too. So the kids, Aisha was probably like maybe 36 months, and Sissy was like 9 months. There was this one day where there was this influencer on Instagram had sent out just like she was having a bridal. She was asking for vendors, to provide her bridesmaids, jewelry or whatever in exchange for marketing, and this is a pretty prominent, influencer. They probably had like 50, 60,000 followers, and they lived in Santa Monica. So it's like a, 30, 40-minute drive from Long Beach to Santa Monica. And I kid you not, I woke up that day and me and Jazz had agreed, okay, we're going to do this. We think this is like a good avenue to try to, get more sales down the line. But we didn't have, I actually had to go to the gas station to ask somebody for cash to get us from Long Beach to Santa Monica. So I asked a stranger. Somebody gave me $20. That was enough money to get there. The only food that we had, and the only food that I was able to cook, was white rice, and we had ketchup. So I made a big Tupperware for like Jazz and the kids and myself. We were gonna have like a little picnic after we on Santa Monica Pier by Yogananda's Gardens, in Santa Monica, and everything went fine. It was beautiful. We were making the best of it, being spiritual, or what we thought was spiritual at the time. But we came to eat, and everybody was really hungry. And it was the only time in my life where I was starving that there actually was not enough food for me. And that's where I was like, this is not spiritual. This is the antithesis of spirituality. It's great that I can deprive myself and still find gratitude and still make the best of a situation and still have optimism. But for me not to have my basic, like go to in psychology, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where I'm like focused on 11, 12, which is like your emotional, psychological, spiritual health, instead of like your actual, like, do I have a roof over my head? Do I have food? It was a wake-up call. And from there, I said, like, this is absolutely never allowed to fucking happen again. And it hasn't. And it's a standard that I have held, and it just is not something that, I don't know, like, so to your point about how do you get there? I just shared that as like a very like, whoa, that's a ridiculous example. But for me, I needed it almost to like go and play with like, how do I get to that point where my nervous system is like, no, that's a no. That's a no, and that can't, like, it won't happen. It can't happen, right? To our conversation. Like, yeah, how do people who are so abundant with money, like, how do they get there? And I think that's how, is like something happens and they're just like, yeah, this is me. This is how I walk. This is how I show up. Like, there is no other option.
Well, what happened with the influencer and the jewelry?
We didn't sell any.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a bummer. We did not sell anything. But that also shows you, like, don't overgive. That was also another lesson, because we just thought, like, oh, yeah, you just overgive. You just overgive, and the universe and God or whatever will take care of you. It's like, no one takes care of you but you. Again, at least that's what we believe, or I believe, is that, yeah, it's like Newton's third law. Every action has an opposite equal reaction. Well, not to say that it wouldn't have worked, but yeah, it didn't. We didn't sell anything.
This time it didn't. Yeah. Well, and I was actually talking to a friend about this recently, who's on the precipice of quitting her job without a backup. And she's like, has this coaching business on the side, but it hasn't yet replaced her income from her job. And I was just telling her too, like, that was my experience. Like, I quit my corporate job, didn't have a backup. And I was under the impression, like, I just did this really scary thing and I created all this space. Everything's going to work out, right? And it's like, I mean, things are working out for sure, but it wasn't immediate. It wasn't significant. It's been like a year and a half of like slowly experimenting, lots of failures, lots of rejection, and like just continuing to build. And I think that is like, talking about distortions is a distortion that I can see as common that I had myself in the spiritual community, that like, oh, if we just take the leap of faith, everything's going to work out. And again, sure, but not like over time and with enough action, like you said, with Newton's third law, is like, we are co-creators. We are in this body, this physical vessel, which I love that you spoke to that too. I'm going to pivot now to that point of like, yeah, I think of the chakra system, where it's like the upper chakras are all like heady ideas, so connected, gratitude, have the higher vision, 1,000%. And, oh, we've got the lower chakras. We are in the body. We have our heart. We're supposed to connect. We have our solar plexus. We're supposed to use our willpower to create, and we have to bring that all online. I guess we don't have to, but like, what a gift it is to do that. And also how challenging I feel like it seems, and how I've even struggled with it, of like bringing all of this like kind of divine energy, like powerful energy, but like, how do you actually like manifest it into the 3D? And if anything, I think money and capital, aka value exchange, is how we do just that. It's a interesting dichotomy. I'm like always turning over in my head.
It is. Well, because again, we're told, like, like even for me, Christianity, it's like, keep your heart and mind on things above, not of the world. But then there's like, I don't know, one of the biggest controversial moments, in like Jesus's time is like, because of the taxation of Rome, was like, what do we do? And he's like, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God's what is God's. Like, there's like an honoring aspect, you know what I mean? At least in that text, to me, of like what he is saying about how do you view, you know what I mean? Like those earthly, bodily, like you said, maybe lower chakra thing. But the truth is like, you can't be in your third eye if your root is like not connected, if it's not all the way through the spine, you know what I mean? Through the sacral, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
into the heart, like it just can't connect. You may think it is, but you're like cut off from the head. But like if you don't have your body with you, like you're not going to be able to do anything. So yeah, that's great that you're like in this alternate reality. And I think that is like the world's biggest problem with like what they call new age is like you're like bypassing, you know?
Yeah.
Like you're just not living in like the reality of like what everyone is at. And that's great that you're able to like say, oh, we're all human, but like if you're not looking at how are you prejudiced, still, or like how do your biases, affect you every day or the people that you engage with, then yeah, what's the point of like saying that we're all one? It's like, we're not, until you can actually like see your uniqueness and see someone else's uniqueness and then unite it like into that interweb, of how all connected. So yeah, it's a very, I think easy topic too, to like do the spiritual gymnastics where it's like everyone can like say a pretty like phrase or word or, like philosophy that kind of just like, yeah, well, I don't really need to worry about that, or that's not really connected to me. And you can do that, but I have found it always comes back and you have to like look at it. And even something with finance that really, and I'm sorry if I'm talking about Jesus so much, but like
no, anything goes. Let's hear it.
I appreciate it. Another thing that he said that just made me feel like, okay, I got to do this thing is like a lot of people, again, thought that he was going to be this idea of like a conquering, hero, like to crush Rome or whatever, like to crush the oppressors. And he just said something that was like, I didn't come to abolish law, I came to fulfill it. And I just thought like, okay, to me, that means, okay, if there's something on earth exists and it's still existing, instead of just trying to like destroy it or burn it down to the ground, is like, have we actually like had the full fulfillment of like what the original intention of that thing was? So if it's money, what is the original intention of it? And has that been fulfilled? Because it can't pass away, right? Because that's where, again, even just from science, like energy, like there's nothing new. Energy is just recreated, but there's like there's nothing new, that happens like in the time-space continuum of Earth. And that's from like a quantum physics perspective. And so, yeah, I just deeply thought, okay, well, if I know about these things, how do I be a part of the system fulfillment rather than being the person that's like, oh, this is the fucking problem, let's fucking burn it down. These people are the reason that the world is so greedy, and the Jeff Bezos and the blah, 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 like they're the reason that no, they're not. They're taking what's theirs. And whether you like that or not, or agree with what they're doing, you talking about them is you just like trying to pass the buck onto something else rather than for you like living up to the responsibility that you have. And like, that's all of us. And I say that like not judging anyone else, because that's the call to action for me every day is like, if I'm waking up and I'm like, yeah, trying to just basically, yeah, talk about the world rather than like, what is my world and what are the things that I'm supposed to be doing, then I am not grounded, to your point about like, or embodied, it's loosey-goosey and there's like no structure. It's just, and that's okay too. We need those days. But I do think, yeah, like when you really want to come to it, it's like you had to, your journey of like quitting corporate. And I've heard that story and how sad, that must have been to learn that everything that you had been giving was not being reciprocated in the way that was like a true equal exchange. But it also led to like, okay, this is something that can happen. And how do I make sure that never happens again? You know what I mean? So I think like, yeah, in a way, yeah. Like, I know you said, and I agree with you, the word test is not the best, but we get this contrast to like help us figure out, yeah, what is my responsibility, to all the things that I'm a holder or steward of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's the stewardship of it all.
Yeah.
It's like, and we each get to be stewards of our time, our attention, our money, and in that, creating more of what we want to see in the world, which sounds really idyllic, but like that's truly like what the gift of this life and of being in human form on earth gets to be, is taking all of our connection to the divine and channeling that into more of what we want to experience in our day to day and more of what we want to see in the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole game, like that's the simulation. If you want to like use the Matrix analogy, for sure.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the purpose of money is, or multiple purposes?
Yeah. No, I think the purpose of money is to create prosperity and security for every single person on the planet. I think that, like Gandhi said it really well, and that there's enough for every man's need, but not for every man's greed. We kind of like embrace that, that like there's enough abundance for everyone. Yeah, people hoard, and don't distribute it in a way that's equanimous. But I do think its main priority is security, for our physical needs as humans, is its purpose, I think.
Okay, let's go back to kind of purpose and calling here, because now we've talked about the spiritual piece. You're talking about, well, we've been talking about the financial piece and the spiritual piece, and you're working on both. So you have this vision for this interfaith ministry, and then you are also working on Erah Capital, and you're currently balancing both. So what is that like, and what is your vision for holding both?
I mean, the ideal scenario would literally to be like to buy like a large plot of land and like open an interfaith tea house on the land. While we were in Bali, we met some really cool friends who are really into Kung Fu Cha, which is like Chinese tea culture, and really got into like that as a modality to kind of connect with self and each other. And so, yeah, like the land would have the tea house, as well as like, I guess you would call it a worship center, which is hilarious that I'm even getting to talk about this. So thank you for like enabling me to. So like, that's how that kind of is the goal to manifest. And I don't even know if I answered the question the way that, again, there's no right answer, I guess.
Yeah.
But then the capital side, like I think like the goal is then to like eventually start our own fund. So it's like once some of these transactions close and we start to gather more and more capital, it would be to like actually open our own fund to then fund ourselves directly, as a financial vehicle for entrepreneurs and businesses who are, of like thought and deed and in action. Yeah, and then like have possibly like a 501(c) that's like an equestrian farm for horses that are to pasture, for people to really connect with like the animal side of it. That's actually something that, Jazz and I are in the process of like trying to put together and transition like as our next adventure, actually, to answer your question. So.
Yeah. You both are generators, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys have lived so many lives. It's like
I know.
MG like, but then also isn't Jazz, she has a 6 in her profile.
Oh, she's a 3-5. So
3-5.
So the 3,
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really why I mean, we've only been married 12 years, but like lived
only.
Like, yeah. No, I know. I know, and it's a long time. But being 36, like it's so interesting to your point. And that's another reason why, like, when I get in conversations with certain people, it's like, I don't need to like share what I know anymore. Like people might think they know me or something. And then it's like, none of us know each other at all, first of all. But second of all, it's like, those lifetimes that we've lived or the different seasons and things that we've gotten to do, I take a lot of confidence in like those experiences that like, even if you were to strip away everything that I have, like I have that is like wisdom, because it's lived experience. Yeah, it does bring a lot of solace. And I would say to anyone who has that ping to like, to take any adventure or to like take any chance, it's like, just, take it. Take it in the way that brings you comfort and security, but take it. Don't not, because that thing is always going to be the thing that and then again, I think everyone knows that, right? Like you're on your deathbed. Like we don't want to be talking about regrets. We want to be talking about the things that, brought us joy and that we like, took the chance on. So, every movie and play and song throughout history has kind of talked about that. So I don't think that's anything new, but I do think, and we'll say, yeah, like even the rice and ketchup story. Like I love it. I have so much fondness for it because it's like it was real. It lived. Like I lived it. Like it was like such a weird, like, why is this happening? Why did I do this? Why did I think that this was acceptable, in any way? To then, yeah, even, yeah, just living in multiple continents and speaking multiple languages and doing whatever with our kids. Like, it's like, yeah, if you're, yeah, privileged enough and all the things, then yeah, you should take a gamble on yourself because you're worth it. Each of us are.
Yeah. Felt. And again, that's how you build wisdom, not just knowledge,
Exactly. Especially in a
which
day
goes
and
a long
age
way.
where all of us have infinite access to all the knowledge on the planet.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. It's like, yeah, everyone can utilize if you're pretty decent with prompts, through AI and like the ability to like, yeah, gather any knowledge you want, but like to like, live it, you know what I mean? To like walk outside and like talk to your neighbors and really like utilize it. That's a completely different skill set. And that's where like the wisdom.
It's like an unconscious skill set, I would say.
It definitely is.
That people feel the difference too when they're interacting with you. And again, like your own inner sense of confidence and therefore where you feel guided. And also like what your nervous system has like capacity for, right? Because we're talking about like nervous system capacity for money, and that could go for, a lot of things, but it's like living in, yeah, I think like an ongoing series of experiments that expands your nervous system to be like, oh, here's this like experiment or scenario I never saw myself living out. Now I'm doing it. Okay, that's possible. What else is possible? And then just continuing to like bounce around.
Yeah, exactly. And well, again, yeah, because that's really the thing is like when you take what feels like a risk, or you like feels like a dangerous thing, or it feels like bravery, the next thing that you feel called to do, it becomes less scary. It's like a whole, like that's the whole process. Is you gather a nervous system that's like, because even again, being in America, when people ask me like, how did you set up your visa? How did you decide where you go? How did you do like I could put together a game plan for anywhere in the world and implement it within 24 hours because I've just done it so many times. But the first time was so fucking scary. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but now it's not. So because I've done it like 4 or 5 times. But yeah, it's so funny. Like yeah, where you're going is exactly true. It just gets easier and easier. So even if it is just something like going to buy a journal or something for yourself that's like specifically for whatever thing is your creative idea, just go do it. Spend, make an investment on yourself and your dreams, like, even in a small way, and you'll be surprised at just how good it feels. You know what I mean? And I think that's the other thing. I think talking, and I know you, have probably the same thought and talking with friends and community about it. Like everyone, I think has that same feeling. Is like when you do it, it's like the sweet nectar of life. Like that's living. Like that's the point.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our time. So I'm going to go into our closing questions.
Okay.
How would you describe your essence or purpose? And if you don't know, what breadcrumbs have you received about it?
Oh, man. My essence is... That's a great question. It's so... Oh... My essence is one of unabounding love, to be honest. Like I just want everyone, anything or anyone that comes in interaction with me, I want to feel like them to feel that they are special and that they have purpose and that they matter so deeply. And whatever their contribution is, that we need it desperately. So I think that's the essence that I feel and always have felt of my heart, truthfully, when I'm soft enough and brave enough to be who I actually am. And then my purpose is to, go and do the thing that everyone else is afraid to do.
Ooh, how does that manifest?
I mean, all the places we've been, all the ways of which that lived our life. Like, I mean, we could break it down to, being in Thailand and watching a documentary on midwifery and then saying, we are going to go have Elisha at the farm, which is like a former, communal, like 5,000 acre communal living place where Ina May Gaskin and Stephen Gaskin like made, very large, like 5,000 midwifery births like were done there. So much so that the American Health Association like did a case study and realized that the cesarean rates and the infant mortality rates were so much better, than hospital births. Like just anything like that. Like I have like 1,000 versions of that. Where, okay, someone's telling me to do this or the world's telling me to do this, but we're going to invert it and we're going to now go do that. Where it's like, so how did that play out in my career? Let's say from a capital perspective, last year when I was head of capital solutions for like a fintech group, I was being recruited by a large investment banking group in San Francisco, and they were going to move us and buy us a house and the whole thing. And then that's when we decided, okay, I'm going to start my own firm, even though we have no capital and like I have to go out and get my own client roster and stuff. Like that's what I'm talking about. It's like to just like be the Leo that's like, okay, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to do. And even though everyone may not believe it, we're going for it, So like that's.
I love that. Okay. What's making life feel rich nowadays?
I think the slowness, autonomy, the ability to choose what I do, when I do, and who I do it with, makes me feel very rich, for sure.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Sovereignty is a big one for me.
Oh, it's huge. It's the biggest. Talking about money, like that's one thing too. I learned so much is like there's so many versions of currency. There's social currency, there's friendship, like everything is a currency. So money is just one version of that. So I think that's the other thing I wanted to say earlier about money is that it's just another version of currency. So it shouldn't be higher, or lower than any other thing. And actually, like in capital, a lot of times I tell people like it's actually just it's the low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? Like the relationships and who you get to hang out with, and are you building something? That's like the higher fruit. That's the fruit that's actually hard to get to in currency. Like money is actually kind of easy,
Ooh.
Yeah.
I see that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna be chewing on that one as we're ending here. Thank you so much for being on. This has been great.
No, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And to my listeners, I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to Rich Souls. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, I would love to hear what one key takeaway is that you got from it in the comments, wherever you're listening to this. If you have any topics or guests that you'd like to see on, feel free to shoot them my way, either in the comment or you can reach out to me on Instagram. And lastly, it would mean so much to me if you were to take just a couple of seconds and rate this podcast. Thank you. See you in the next one.